Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. All right, guys, welcome back. I am joined by Michael A. Herbert, is a gentleman that runs the Recovery Guide LLC down in Delray Beach, Florida. Hey, welcome back to the show, Michael. It's a pleasure to put the face with the voice. I didn't know that you were a professional bodybuilder too.
Well, listen, I'm a semi-professional Peloton rider, and I just purchased this new machine called the Climber. So we'll see what that does to my body. But I recently had a total knee replacement, so it kind of took me out of the game. So now the last 8 weeks, I've been really working out hard, to get back into shape.
Oh, yeah. It looks it, man. Like, what would you in high school? What did you play in high school? You an athlete? You football?
I was a burnout in high school.
Oh,
I didn't play any sports.
When did you get into fitness?
I didn't get into fitness until I started when I joined the military, and that lasted for a while. But as I got further and further into my addiction, I couldn't do both. So it was a lot of off and on stuff. And then when I got into recovery, I really made it a priority. So I had done CrossFit for about 10 years. I did that regularly, joined several gyms, ran several marathons. I ran an ultra marathon, and that was 155 miles through the Sahara Desert, 120 degrees. And I did that in my 50s.
Oh my God.
And I raised $100,000 for a scholarship fund for treatment.
Wow.
So that was my biggest feat. And then last year I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro.
My God.
I try to stay in shape, and my vacations are more adventurous. One year, I lived with the Tarahumara Indians out in the mountains of Mexico. For me, that's a part of my recovery, is fully living life. It's not just don't drink and make a meeting. It's about really living life and doing the things that you may have dreamt about, but never actually lived. And so I'm experiencing all of my dreams and more through recovery.
That's amazing. And, I guess I should be asking you, is exercise and physical fitness, is that kind of hand in hand with recovery? Is it it's very helpful, right?
It ideally should be, because the disease of addiction affects us physically, mentally, and spiritually. And I know when you get off drugs, your body starts to repair itself, but just the average person has to stay in shape just to be able to survive 70 and 80. You need some muscle tone, and you need to be in good shape for your later years in life. And exercise does promote, more breathing, oxygen to the brain. You feel better about yourself. You look better. I got to tell you, if we treated anyone else the way the average person treats their body, with slips and falls, eating too much, cigarettes, sex, all of the bad behaviors, you would go to prison for life if you treated anybody else the way you treated your body.
100%.
And part of recovery is taking care of your physical self.
Wow.
So that's just really important to me. I started meditating. I meditate 2 or 3 times a day. That's important. So there's a lot of things that go along with recovery. We have to recover from the damage that we have done, but also we have to get the stuff that we didn't get as a result of our active addiction. There were so many things. People start to go back to school because they couldn't finish in their active addiction, or they have other ideas of things that just were never possible as a result of addiction. So in recovery, we are responsible for creating a great life for ourselves, the very best that we can.
Wow. And I got to ask, so when you raised all this money and you did this 155 miles, did I get that right?
250 kilometers. If you go that kilometer route, that's what it was. But I go the miles. It was 155 miles. It was a marathon a day for 4 days and 58 miles on the 5th day.
How, I mean, how long do you have to train for something like that? And how long were you outside of your challenges?
I started my training 13 months and I got up to running 16 miles and I said, this is too much.
Well,
and
you're
so
a big guy. I mean,
I got up to 16 miles and I said to myself, I can't keep running like this. and in 16 miles, I was in like the heat of Florida.
Oh,
and
no.
The race was, I think, in September. So what I did was I stopped running and I increased my CrossFit and I just walked the beach. And anytime I ran, I just ran a mile on the beach because I knew in the desert, it's going to be impossible to run 26 miles straight. But if you can run, walk, and keep going and get done within the time that they allow for you each day, you're going to be okay. So you have to have strong legs and a strong back because you have to carry all of your equipment also.
Oh,
so
what do you mean equipment? Oh,
you have to carry 7 days worth of food. You have to carry your sleeping bag, your everything. The only thing you don't carry is you don't carry the tent with you, and you carry 3 bottles of water with you. So 1 bottle of water, I had plain water. The other one I had electrolyte, and the other one I had this drink called UCAN, which was a concentrated powder, a starch, that I kind of used as a meal.
Oh, to get like the calories in there.
Yeah, it was 200 calories. You had to do 2,000 calories a day. And the interesting thing, so I'm in the middle of the Sahara Desert, and people are just, addiction is so everywhere. So I got up to this lady, she's standing there, and I said, what are you doing? She said, oh, I'm smoking a cigarette. No. I said, you're out here in the middle of the desert smoking cigarettes? She says, yep, I smoke every day, and I'm not going to stop just because I'm running. One day my leg was hurting and I got offered pain medication. So, the person didn't know I was in recovery, but it's like in the middle of the desert, you can get anything you wanted basically. And so addiction, the possibilities of addiction are everywhere, but it was a great experience for me to do it. And what I was also able to do, one of the more proud things I was able to do, was I was able to get 6 other recovering addicts to run a race. One went to Chile, a couple of did the same race in China and in Egypt, and they all did the 155 miles, and they all completed it.
Wow.
And, the sad part of the story is one of the young men that did complete it 2 years later overdosed and died because he didn't stay in recovery. So
are you finding that now that's become more frequent than ever when people go back? If they slip up, they stub their toe, but not used to the same amounts, or it has something else in it that they didn't know that's in it. I mean, that was always around, but now is it more prevalent?
Well, I mean, the fentanyl is killing a lot of people, and people don't know how to, quote unquote, measure it out for the right amount. They don't actually know what they're getting, and they die. But this person who died, he was a law student, and there was just a lot of pressure for education, and he started doing Adderall. And it was the Adderall that just got him completely out of control.
He OD'd from Adderall?
Excuse me?
He OD'd from Adderall?
Yeah. He,
wow.
He wanted to be able to keep up with the testing and the education. But, he knew he was an addict, but he took the risk anyway.
Yeah.
And it was fatal.
There was something probably mixed with it.
No, it was just, he got it from a psychiatrist.
And he just took too much of it, huh?
Yeah. Hmm.
Why have you heard of that? Is that I never thought that was common. I didn't think people really died from that. But that is that a
Yeah,
real thing?
that's a real thing. Absolutely. Yeah. Hmm.
Wow.
That's
Uh,
why, that's why they're in detox. When someone is getting off it, they go to detox because it's got to be medically safe.
so how much of the people that you help, what percentage would you say, is it half, is it a quarter of them that are trying to get off these prescriptions?
I would say, yeah, 50% of the people that I work with are on some kind of, it's
Benzo
not
or
necessarily prescribed to them, but on some kind of prescription medication. And
okay.
whether they get it from a doctor or off the street, that's what they struggle with. Yeah.
Wow. So how do you feel? You must have some opinions on when doctors prescribe drugs. Like I guess they call them that series one or uh, uh, there's levels to them. Like the real serious ones, like the opiates and stuff. Those are like level one, or there's a word
Yeah.
for it.
Mhm. Well, the problem I think with doctors in prescribing is they're doing this as solo practice. They're not necessarily aware that that person sees a therapist or a psychologist or has addiction problems. And even if they are aware, they don't consult with those other professionals to be able to give the person the best medical advice for their current situation. So if people worked more as a team, you would get better results. But people work privately or individually, and that's how people get into trouble.
Right. Because
And
they don't
you
know what the
can't,
other person's doing.
right, and you can't always trust a person coming into your office and trust their word
Right.
that, this is what's going on and they need this.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who are drug seeking.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it was a big thing years. I think they did a little bit better on it where they would do a thing called doctor shopping, where
Doctors, yeah.
where they could go in and go to a bunch of different doctors. But I think they kind of went to a different model where you can't really do that. I don't
Well,
think.
it's a little more, it's more coordinated. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Now here's a question. How do you feel about say someone has is an addict, is recovered, but then goes to the doctor and they say that they need something like a testosterone, which steroids can be very addictive too. How do you work with someone who goes? That's just an example, but
So
say they want to get.
that's a good example, and you would ask yourself, well, why does a 26-year-old need testosterone? And so usually they're not using it for the right reason. They're using it to go to the gym and get big.
Right.
And, that's testosterone has a value, but it should be prescribed just like any medication to a person who needs it for something more specific than to get big and look good in the gym.
Right. Right.
And so you have gyms that are full of young men on testosterone that don't necessarily need it, and they don't necessarily know what the effects are going to be when they're 40 and 50 years old.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing as cigarettes. People smoke cigarettes, but they don't die of cancer till 40 years later, or emphysema till 40 years later. So the effects happen later, so they're not immediate. So people don't, take it as serious.
Yeah.
And that's a real problem.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
Hey, Mr. Producer, you got a couple questions for Michael Herbert. But before we do that, Michael, tell people how to get a hold of you, and just can you touch on your take just before the questions, because it's so important, of how you work with the family, in case people haven't heard, your attack on this problem. You incorporate the whole family.
I incorporate the whole family, and usually I get a call from a family member about someone in their family. And I make it very clear to the family that my job is not just to go to that person with the drug or alcohol problem and focus on them, that I'm going to focus on you and the entire family. Do you agree? Are you willing to participate in this process? And if they say no, then there's a good chance that I'm just going to pass them on to somebody else to work with. Because I know that the family is probably the most important aspect of a person's recovery, of it being successful. And if someone, a mother, a father, a sister, brother, wife, or husband is going to call me about someone else, why wouldn't they be involved in that? Most of them will say, well, I didn't do anything. It's not my fault. And they almost have the attitude of, let me send my loved one to you and you fix them. And then bring them back to me.
Yeah.
Well,
That don't work that way.
I don't want to bring them back to you if you still have your own work to do. So let's try to work together so we can be successful at this. And most of the time when you really explain and you talk to families about how they've been negatively affected by addiction, they realize, oh, it's not my fault, but there is some work that I need to do to help myself and my loved one. But, that has to be kind of explained to the family, and it may take a couple of sessions for that to happen.
Gotcha. Yeah, I love your approach. It's so different, and it's very effective from what I've read, and how you've explained it. I can't imagine how many people you've helped with this approach.
Yeah, it's a lot, but listen, I'm one man. Yeah. So, in the big picture, I haven't helped a lot of people, but for one person, I've helped a lot.
Oh, come on. Yeah. And you also do interventions too. Can you talk about that?
I do interventions. I work with families, and I use I don't use that surprise model. I use more of an invitational model. So even the person that's being intervened on knows that, next Saturday, we're going to meet as a family and discuss what's going on with the family. And they can talk to me before the intervention, find out who I am, what I do, ask me any questions. So I try to be upfront, open, and honest with them, so they don't feel like, they've been deceived in the intervention.
Right. That's it. I set it off on the wrong foot right away, right?
Yeah, I want to be a partner. I want to be able to work with them. We're going to work together as a team.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm the coach and they're the players. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. Because you've heard a million of these stories where someone is surprised and everybody's sitting there, and all it turns into is just okay, you think I got a problem? Well, you got this problem and you got this, and it just I assume that that model doesn't work for you and your approach at all.
Well, I mean, obviously there are people who have been helped by that approach, but I think there used to be a TV show, and I don't know, to me, it just felt so exploitive.
Yeah.
Putting those people on TV like that, and, it turns into like a Jerry Springer,
right,
thing where people are yelling and running around the streets and this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
I guess that works for some, but, one of the things that's addiction is connected to shame. And that approach seems to me to be very shaming. And it's not something that I would do, because people are very, very sensitive. So anyone can feel shamed around, you just ask them a question, they feel, ashamed around it. So it oftentimes you just have to be really sensitive to people. And putting people in situations like that, I don't know that that's always helpful. But again, people do recover in many different ways.
Right. Yeah. And then if it's on TV, then you have to question the validity of if the people really do have problems, or they just want it, because that's a drug too, that the attention and the the celebrity, I guess. But that's a whole nother conversation. Let's get to the people that want to talk to you, because I can't believe we're not going to be doing any shows anymore. So this is the last time people are going to get to ask you questions, unless they go where?
They can go to recoveryguide.net. That's my website. They can email me at recoveryguide@gmail.com or give me a call at 561-221-7677. And I work nationally and internationally, so you don't have to live in Florida. And I also have a team that works with me. So we really are able to help a lot of people.
Awesome. And people who, you don't have to be the person with the problem. You could be the mother, father, brother, girlfriend, whatever, because you're going to work with everybody in your model.
Absolutely.
Got it. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So what do you got, Mr. Producer?
We have Frank in Chicago wants to know, have you done work with people who get addicted to pain pills after a major surgery?
Absolutely. Athletes, dancers, just regular people. And those are the people who wind up in treatment probably feeling really different. I'm not an addict like them. I didn't choose to be addicted, but I got addicted because of pain medication. So there is they do feel a little unique and different, but over time, they're usually able to see that, the recovery process can work for them. And obviously abstinence is where it starts. Getting some education and changing their actions and behaviors work. The struggle sometimes with that group of people, and with a lot of people with pill addiction problems, is they wonder or they believe it's okay to drink. Now, with some people, maybe it is, but it's not something that I would promote, because you are taking a risk. You can't override the science. Alcohol does affect your brain. It lowers your inhibitions. And if your inhibitions are lowered, you may say yes to things that you normally would say no to if you hadn't had a drink. So I would be very careful about drinking and marijuana and things like that. And I don't know that there's any medical necessity to smoke pot or drink. So other than people drink and smoke pot because they like the way it feels. But that can get out of control.
Right. Gotcha. Good question. Mr. Producer, what else you got?
We have Marcus in Long Beach who wants to know, what other addictions can people be afflicted with besides drugs and alcohol?
Drugs, alcohol, gambling, work, sex, food, shopping, money, anger. They all affect a certain part of the brain. So addiction is bigger than a particular substance. And most people who are in, 12-step recovery understand that it isn't so much the substance, it's the addiction that's the problem. And addiction is that feeling that people get, that obsession, that compulsion, and that craving for more of that something. And that something, again, could be food, it could be work, it could be relationships, could be money, shopping, gambling, all of that stuff.
Yeah. Hey, I got to tell you, Michael A. Herbert, I've enjoyed you coming on the podcast with me. Your shows are great. I love your approach. I love how much you're helping people, and it's been a great experience. I know you've given us a lot of great information, helped a lot of people. But let me give you the final floor here. Anything you want to say or leave us with, because it's been a pleasure. I just want to say thank you.
Yeah. Well, the only thing I can really say is, if you believe you have a problem, if you think you have a problem, if you might have a problem, talk to somebody about it. You don't have to know absolutely for sure, but if you think you have it, talk to somebody and maybe you can get some direction and some help. There is help available. The worst thing that can happen, I think, for people is you get these phone calls and somebody says, well, I've lost everything. I don't have any money. I don't have any resources. And it really is hard to get help when you get down to that kind of bottom. So don't get to that kind of bottom. Get some help early. But if you happen to get there, there's still help available. It's just not as available as if you still had some resources. And I hate to talk about money, but money is important in getting. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, Michael A. Herbert, everybody go to recoveryguide.net. And once again, thank you. Doing some great work.
All
Michael
right.
A. Herbert, everybody. We'll be right back.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Bye.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.